Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Welcome again to Live It Out Inc. on another thankful, thoughtful Thursday. We want you guys to come in, come in, come in. Join us on tonight. Click like, click share, because we want to share the information that we have. We want to be a resource to some people. We want to educate our community. So that's why we want you guys to click like, click share, invite your family and friends to join in on the conversation. What we're having today, just to give you an update on what Living Out Inc. has been doing. October has been National Awareness Month. So we did national awareness on depression. Shout out to Keisha and Vanessa and Kiara from Empower Women. Go check her out on IG for helping us with the depression segment. Also, we did a segment on bullying this month. Thank you, Jamarcia and Gigi. They were awesome. And tonight, which is one that's close, dear to my heart too. We're going to do a segment on ADHD, attention deficit hyperactive disorder. And we have an amazing young lady, amazing queen that has so much information and so many resources that she's going to share with us. So if you guys have any questions on ADHD, adult ADHD, anything you think you want to ask, please just type it in the comments and we will try to answer your questions as best as we can. We did get a couple of questions off social media, so we will address those. Next Thursday, we will do National Breast Cancer Awareness. So if you are a cancer survivor or you know someone that would like to be on the segment with us, we just want to celebrate them. We want to talk a little bit about breast cancer, how to get yourself checked, how to protect the tatas and all of this. So if you're a survivor or you know someone, please just DM us, email us at liveitoutinc@gmail.com. Okay. Or just hit me or Christina Duck a message and we will get right back with you. So without further ado, we want to invite in our special guest. She is a veteran at dealing with ADHD. And we're gonna get into it. So Stephanie McGruder, if you would come from backstage, hi love.
Hello.
It is so awesome to have you back. I know we had you here one time when we was doing suicide awareness,
Awareness.
and you were
Yes.
so awesome. I mean,
Oh, thank you.
the
Thank you.
feedback was phenomenal. And
Oh,
I
thank you.
know that,
Wow. Praise
yeah,
God.
it was. And you do a broadcast. You had been doing a broadcast on 106 or something.
Yes, 106 Live.
Okay. Um,
Hmm.
so you let the people know that they can catch you on there too, because that's a lot of information.
Oh, thank
You
you.
guys are doing an awesome job over there as well. But we're gonna jump into this ADHD. So we're gonna talk a little bit about what is ADHD.
Okay. Well, okay, first of all, I want to make it clear. I'm a certified peer specialist through the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health. So I am not a clinician or psychiatrist or a therapist that can diagnose anyone.
Okay.
And so I will admit, maybe at some point, my recommendation is to try to find a therapist or psychiatrist or a psychologist that may want to come on your show. And so just to let people know, what to look for, what the symptoms are, what I can do generally when I work with families, it's because someone has already been diagnosed, whether it's adult or whether it's a child, and they already have their diagnosis, and then they come into services or care where I would help just to give them some tips on, how to continue in their care, how to keep the child in the home, things of that sort. Because we do realize that when a person has a diagnosis, and sometimes their needs warrant them being put in a treatment facility, depending on the level of need, depending on the level of what they're experiencing. And even just to do medication management, you want to keep a close eye on them. If the family, whether it's adult, whether it's a child, and they decide, okay, you know what, we're going to do medication treatment. So if you decide to take that route, then that person really needs to be, watched. really needs to be monitored to make sure the medicines are working, and to make sure they're on a good level to help them stay focused.
Okay.
So
So when we're talking ADHD,
attention deficit
hyper
hyperactivity
order,
disorder.
yeah. What I mean, like, what does that look like, even in kids and adults? And then in kids and adults, and then is it connected to autism? Is
Oh,
ADHD
certainly.
connected to autism?
Okay, well, so what I do know is that, you know, a person can have dual diagnosis, meaning more than one. And I will say, my own personal experiences with my child, he had a dual diagnosis, autism and the ADHD. And what I noticed was that he was a really rambunctious fella, but for me, I noticed things like early on, toddler, and sometimes that's out of the norm for some folks, so it's going to be different. And there are adults who have lived their lives, and things have been wonderful, and then something happens like, whoa, okay. And so, but generally, when a person says that they have ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, means that, or just ADHD, excuse me. And sometimes it just means that their attention span is short. They don't focus in on one thing and stay with that. They could just be all over the place. Sometimes it's just organizational skills. So what I suggest to families who have children and they deem that that child, might have attention deficit, and it's usually most of the school settings kind of pick up on it first. A lot of parents just kind of say, "Oh, my child's rambunctious," and they're supposed to be like that. And but sometimes the school settings tend to notice it a lot too. And so what I suggest to parents is, when that happens, you do your own case study. Take a day off work. Go and monitor your child in school. I did that. I sat in the back of the classroom just to see him. He didn't even know I was there. I sat in the back just to kind of watch and see his interaction. And then as things progress, and you start trying to think of what's the appropriate educational setting for my child. Can my child still? So then, when you get into your educational supports, does my child need an IEP, an individualized educational plan? If your child needs an individualized educational plan, then you need to write a letter. Don't just call. Write a letter, send it to the school, email, talk to the teachers, put something in writing to say, we need to, do something with my child to make sure they stay on task academically. Because we know a lot of times that children who have diagnoses need educational support so that they can keep their grades up. So so that happened to me. And I was like, okay, my child needs an IEP. I'll admit, I didn't even understand what that was. I did not. And so picked up the phone. I called over to the Georgia Department of Education, down to the main office, and they are over the superintendents for all the school systems. So I called down there and I'm like, listen, I'm a parent. I don't know what this is gonna look like. I don't even know what's going on. And it was like, well, you know what, Miss McGruder, call your school superintendent and let them know. And I did. And they got on it right away. And I will admit, I was in Douglas County at the time. And Douglas County school system sent over an education specialist to my child's school. And they did the same thing I did. They went and sat in the back of the classroom to monitor him. And so when I had my first IEP meeting, the educational support person came and she made me feel like I was going to be okay. She made me feel like the situation was going to be all right. And one thing she said was, first of all, I want to say that when I came in, I saw 10 other kids before I realized who he was. So I
Yeah.
was like, okay, so I'm not alone. And so what I tell families is, if whether you're an adult, whether you're a child, what you need to know is it's okay. You're going to be okay. And so the next thing, what to do now that I have a diagnosis? of ADHD. Once you do that, if you're not in this, if you're an adult, I suggest find your good psychiatrist and a psychologist and decide what course plan works best for you. And they can help them work through that process. They can help them work through, okay, do we want to do medications? Do you want to try, there are a lot of people who believe that their diet can assist them,
Mhm.
but, they look for holistic means, and that's okay too. So everybody, you have to be patient. It's not a quick fix. The medicine just ain't gonna make it work overnight. And sometimes what I learned was that, I never wanted to, if I can just be honest, I never wanted to allow my child to take medications.
Okay.
Um, I tell families if your child is acting out, because sometimes some kids, even adults, can act out aggressively. So but those things need to be addressed immediately. Those things you can't just be passive on. You have a question.
Well, yeah. I mean, with the medication, I know sometimes the medication put the kids that I've seen in a zombie like state. It calms them down, but it's like they're in a trance and they're just going
It
through the motions of just being there.
that
I
can
guess it can kind of make them focus, but it looks like,
well,
to me it looks like it just sucks so much life out of them,
some
especially.
of them can. I, I tell all families just don't settle for that though.
Okay.
If they're at a state of mind where they're not focusing, or it's making them more sleepy and giving them that zombie like feeling, go back to the doctor and let them know. Sometimes it may, you might need to tweak some things. You might need to, fine tune some things. That might not be the right combination. And so that does happen, you know, during my time when my child was little, we ended up in the ER 3 times because he was heavily medicated. And I thank God that I always found the right program. And he was in this after school program where they would pick him up from school, take him to his after school program, but it was a program that worked with his doctor's office.
Okay.
And so the doctor had adjusted his medicines, and when I got to pick him up from the after school program, one of the teachers, well, she was a counselor also, she pulled me to the side. She's like, "Listen, he has developed a twitch,
Mm.
and I know that the doctor changed his medicines. I've already called them to let them know the medicine is too strong."
Okay.
Oh, I felt so bad. Oh, it killed me as a mom. Like, God, how did I not see that? How did I miss, what was happening to him? And it just really it took a lot out of me emotionally that time. But what God said, I still had somebody in place who was knowledgeable because I wasn't trained to know that. I wasn't trained to be aware of what to look, what things to look for with the medicines that might trigger certain things. So, if a parent or an adult, you decide you want to, okay, I need medication because of my diagnosis, then don't be passive. Don't be passive because there are a lot of side effects. That's the word I'm looking for. There are a lot of side effects that can trigger and be harmful to the body.
Can do you think that it people can be diagnosed later in life with ADHD? Like they may not pick up on it like early childhood, and they may go through grade school.
Oh,
But
oh
when
yeah, absolutely. People, diagnosis, and even a person with a diagnosis, it can change. It can progress to something else. Especially if it's not being properly treated. Especially if they're not working closely with their psychiatrist for their medicines. So, but because what happens is your psychologist is only going to help you um, with
We're coping. Okay.
coping skills. Okay, but and, and you working through your processes to stay healthy. But your psychiatrist will help you with your medication management. Not only are they helping you with your coping skills, but to add another piece, they're going to help you with your medication management to make sure you're getting the right doses. To make sure you're being mindful of side effects. Because there are certain medicines. God, I don't want to get that deep into stuff since I'm not a doctor.
Okay.
But there are certain medicines that I know there are a few of them that require your blood levels to be checked so they can make sure that your kidneys are fully functioning.
Oh wow.
Mhm.
Wow. Didn't know it got that deep when it got to the medication. But how important do you think it is to start getting those services early?
Oh,
Because I know in early childhood, a lot of parents are they'll be in denial and they'll be like, oh, he's just a boy, or they just playing rough, or they find excuses like the rambunctious child. But when a child is showing signs of inattentiveness and hyperactive and impulsive behavior, how important is it to try to get their help and get those kids the services they need as early as possible?
well, as soon as you deem that something, especially if you're not, if it's not just you, clearly somebody else has said, you know what, you might want to get your child checked. Clear whether it was at the school, the daycare, another family member. If more than one person had said something, then you certainly need to, the earlier the better, just like with any kind of illness. Whether it was cancer, we all know, you know, this month is breast cancer awareness month. We we should encourage men too. My mom just did, a piece on the radio about breast cancer. She's a breast cancer survivor. But one thing that she pointed out, which kind of shocked me, was that there were more men getting treated for breast cancer than there were women. So just like with any other sickness, do your monthly self breast exams. So the earlier we all know if it's any kind of sickness, the earlier the treatment, the better your chances of success.
Okay. So
So,
once they notice that it's something wrong, like if the school or family member somebody says, hey, you might want to get your child checked out, what's the steps that they need to go to get that diagnosis? I know in the school system, we have to do so much documentation. I think it's like we have to have at least 20 pieces of document, and then they bring in a behavior specialist.
for a child,
Yeah,
okay.
and we have the behavior specialist then comes in and she does her observation, and then she would make a referral to
Have you all?
whatever county the child is in.
So when that happens, has the parent been informed that this
Yeah,
is happening?
well, they bring the parent in after the school has to do what they can do first, because teachers
Okay,
cannot make a diagnosis. Period.
absolutely.
Teachers cannot tell a parent
They're
that.
just making a referral that there
Yes,
is a possibility.
yeah, so they can only
Okay.
just bring the behavior,
And-
let them make them aware of the behavior. So
okay.
once they make the documentation, once we do the documentation so many times, then the supervisor or the curriculum specialist or whoever the family support coordinator person is,
Okay.
they then contact the parent and say, we want to do a staffing with you. They call it a staffing, and they bring in
Okay.
the behavior specialist and the teacher, and they had a documentation, and then they let them know. They try to get them on a plan like individual IEP, individualized educational plan, or IFSP, and individual family service plan, all those things to see if the parent is on board. But if the parent is not on board, then it kind of stop us dead in our tracks. So
Wow.
we have to stop and wait until they get into, because we're a private setting. So once they get into the public school setting, then they have to pick it up and start all over again from day one. When you could have already had these services done, and those services could have transferred with you into the public school setting. So A lot of parents, because they think they're so young in early childhood, they be like, "There's nothing wrong. I don't know. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it." And then some parents, I've had parents where the behavior specialist has come into the classroom 2 or 3 times a week, and they stay 2 3 hours each time they come, and the difference in those children were so like so far fetched for the child that was getting the services from the child that wasn't getting the services.
Wow. Well, you know, so certainly it's always important that parents try to recognize and not be in denial. Couple of things that I tell my families is number one, go to the school yourself, see what your child is doing. And then secondly, after that, go contact your pediatrician, contact your child's pediatrician, number one, and they can help find a psychologist or a psychiatrist who can diagnose whether the child has ADHD, or just to get that diagnosis, or to do a rule out. If they find, because they have certain tests, certain parameters, that they can do to kind of see where the child is. And so those are things that I kind of suggest to families. Not only that, even with reaching out to the school, you also want to maybe, even if that means switching your child's classroom for another teacher. Some teachers are a little bit more patient than
Yeah.
others. Those are things that I learned, and I can always kind of tell, even when I accompany families to IEP meetings, or I've gone to IEP meetings for my own child, I just kind of learn. We're all human, and some folks have a little bit more patience than others. And certainly, if a child has a diagnosis, that child's going to need a lot of patience anyway. And so, and then we were able to put in behavioral modifications in the IEP. And some teachers volunteer. Okay, if he's having a bad day, send him to my classroom. He does really well with reading. He does, or the PE teacher, that child loves sports. Send them to the PE classroom. We can let them, that can be an outlet. So then you start looking at, if you're not, in addition to whichever course of treatment you decide for your child, you want to keep educational supports in place. And I know that's kind of difficult now because we're all, most kids are being homeschooled right now.
Yes.
But whatever the IEP is at the school, parents need to try to incorporate that into their home right now. Whatever behavior modifications and supports, they need to do whatever is necessary to help keep themselves at peace and the child at peace.
Okay. So once we get the diagnosis, okay, once we recognize that, okay, hey, something is definitely going on here. We got the diagnosis. How do we get it treated? Like, what are some ways that we start to treat the ADHD in kids and adults? And then is it different when you're treating adults than it is for kids?
Oh, certainly. Well, it's going to be different anyway because of where the two the age ranges are.
Okay.
And so, and then adults can pretty much articulate a little bit more than what the kids can, what works best for them. And so, once a person has a diagnosis, it's all hands on deck. You then want to start trying to build your course of treatment plan for yourself. You know, Parents will have to help, do it for their children, but as an adult, they'll have to decide what works for themselves. So I would, number one, reach out to, I would decide, check what your insurance is like. Do you have private insurance? Is there no insurance? Do you have, Medicare, Medicaid as an adult? Those are things you're going to need to find out, so that now you have to start looking at, where can I go for help? Am I going to need a state supported provider? If you need a state supported provider, then that number, you need to call that number again, GCAL, Georgia Crisis and Access Line, so they can get connected to a state supported provider. And they're going to need, check out what kind of providers are in the community where they live. GCAL can help them connect. So, that will be whether they decide they want to take medications or not, whether they need a psychiatrist or not. So, and then, build your natural support system. What's a natural support system? You're going to look at your friends and families. You're going to look at your friends. You're going to look at your family members. Build your team. Who can help you when you have a need? Um, are you going to be able to get to the doctor for yourself? Do you need assistance getting to the doctor? With your attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, if you have a dual diagnosis, so you're now building, you're involved in your own care and what works best for you as an adult. And you gotta assume the responsibility for your care and treatment so that you can stay healthy. There are a lot of people who, pick up hobbies.
Okay.
I have a friend and I didn't know it, and she's a very successful business owner. And I was like, she was working on something. I was like, hey, why are you doing it this way? Why not do it that way? Because that way it's gonna take you longer. She says, I need for it to take me longer because this helps me with my attention deficit hyperactivity. I was like, well, girl, who knew? So you just kind of develop what works best for you. Get you a hobby. I know a gentleman and uh, ex-military, but um, I don't want to say what he does because I don't want to call him out, but I'll say he sews for a hobby, and he is absolutely amazing. And he has his own little, YouTube show. He sews like nobody's business, and it's therapeutic for him. So, and it helps him with his diagnosis. And so and he's an adult. He got it as an adult. He received his diagnosis as an adult. So you just kind of decide what works best. How do I incorporate things that will help me stay healthy? And like I said, it's not a quick fix. And even for children, parents gotta you just gotta be hands on.
Yeah.
There is no way around it. There is no way around you not being active and involved in your child's treatment plan. I just did a video as a certified peer, and what I said in the video that Christina helped me with was you or parents must realize that they're their child's best advocate for services and resources that will help them reach a place of being not just healthy, but in recovery. And when I say recovery, I mean that, you got to know that one day your child's going to be an adult.
Yes.
So they're going to transition out from being a child with a diagnosis to an adult with a diagnosis. And it's a whole different ball game. You know, they can get through the education through the elementary school years, but then you got to get them through the high school years.
Exactly.
Are they going to be an adult college student with a diagnosis? So the playing field changes, their peers change, and so you just kind of got to help them. Sports might be an outlet. All those things should be incorporated into their management plan, whatever the doctor comes up with, whatever the school comes up with. So all those things, so it's all hands on deck at that point.
So those are some things that parents can do. Like they have to be really involved. They really need to be involved. Be safe about how they're giving the medication. You know,
Exactly.
because
Ask questions. Ask
ask
plenty of
questions
questions.
and work with the
And
school.
definitely ask, what are the side effects? What things should I look out for if I decide to give my child this medication? Because I never forget, a doctor prescribed a medicine to my child and they told me only give it to him as needed.
Mm.
Wrong answer. Because so I skipped the day because I thought he didn't need it.
Because he didn't. Yeah.
And so the next day I decided, well, I better give him some. I was dialing 911 seconds after giving it to him.
Wow.
It frightened me so badly. He was like, Mama, he was crying, he was screaming, he was like, I can't feel my hands. Hold me, hold me, hold me. I'm slipping away, I'm slipping away. And I was like, what? And the EMTs came, I called, they rushed him to the hospital, and it was that same doctor,
The same.
yeah. And they were, and I know they were adjusting his medications because it needed to be adjusted. I just advise parents pay attention, even as an adult. He's had emergency room visits because of the side effects to medicine. So, now I know he had 3 allergic reactions to 3 different medications, and we do not take those, even now. So I had to tell him that, okay, now that you're an adult, let me tell you, this is what you can't take. This, this, and this, and this, because those right there had adverse reactions, and he ended up into the emergency room. And the last time was maybe about 3 or 4 years ago,
Mhm.
and he was on this medication, and he just broke out in a cold sweat. It just, we rushed him in, but they were able to administer some Benadryl to reverse the
To
reaction.
reverse. Okay. Wow. So, parents, that if you have kids with ADHD, just know you need to be very involved. Ask the questions about your medication. Um, and it was 2 questions that were asked
Okay.
on social media. And one of them was like, is there a school or doctor that specializes in natural supplements and one-on-one learning? Now, my part to that is that I did find out that it's a supplement called Natural Relief. That's for ADHD. So if you want to look into that, you can. But I do know that therapists, once you get the diagnosis and you are assigned to, it depends on your insurance company again. They have behavior specialists that will come to your home and your child's school. I don't know if they'll come to your home now because of COVID-19. I don't know
No,
if they're doing
very
it.
few will right now.
Oh, okay. But before all of this happened, they would go into the home and spend some time with the child and kind of shadow the child and everything to see how the behaviors are, how they act in home life and in the school. So that's what I know. Do you have any other resources for us, the supplements and doctors and the one-on-one learning?
Okay, so in terms of the school setting certainly is extremely different. What I tell families is number one, go ahead and at least let your child do a year um, in public school. Do a year in public school with an IEP, because then after that child has had an IEP in public school for 1 year, you can then reach out to the Department of Education and decide if you want to get a waiver. You can do that. What is that waiver called? I should have had that name in front of me. Um, there is a waiver that will, and it's what it is. That waiver is basically the money that the county, the public school has received for your child's education. You can then take that money with you and go somewhere else.
Oh, okay.
But you must have, that child must have been on their IEP for at least a year in the public school setting. And so you can kind of try to use that towards, a school that accepts the voucher. And but in terms of one-on-one school settings, or one-on-one, I'm not familiar with any educational supports in that manner. I will suggest that families call the Department of Education, and there's an education specialist down there that can tell them if their child has a diagnosis, what supports and services are available.
Okay.
Now,
With adults, and it's just a situation that I actually knew about. A guy that I knew, he was ADHD, and
mhm,
he was never able to obtain his driver's license.
hmm,
Yeah, he wasn't, because he couldn't pass the test. He didn't have the attention span to sit there and just like really do the test.
he
But
made them aware of that because
once
that's
once they made him aware of it, when it's a grown man, once they made him aware of it, they had somebody to sit with him in the room
That's right.
and read the questions to him
That's right.
for the test. So I don't know if people know that those services are out there. Um,
Yes, because that's part of the ADA, the
okay,
American Disabilities Act. So if a person has any kind of disability, I don't care what it is, agency is supposed to provide them with the supports that they need in order to so they can thrive and receive the same appropriate services as everyone else.
okay, so that's good to know. That's another resource. So if you see them struggling with something like their driver license or filling out application, it is support there for you. But we need to know that we can ask for that support. Yeah,
That's right. Absolutely.
we need to know that we can ask for it. The
Absolutely.
the other question was how to overall deal with ADHD in a healthy way. Now I know my best friend, well, I call her my sister, her son, and he just grew up in my eyes. It's just he just grew up, and we was fighting this thing together. Because we was gonna make sure he was gonna graduate high school and everything. It was like, nah, we ain't gonna just throw you. We gonna and this girl fought tooth and nail with the school, with the Fulton County services and everything. She demanded, hey, you're gonna educate my child because
Absolutely.
so I've seen that. I've seen that fight in a mother. But I know that the doctor was telling us that the sleep, adequate sleep, to make sure that they get enough sleep, and how important exercise was to the body and mind. And they were saying that some kids with ADHD don't like to play sports. They rather play the video game or do something on TV, and they're not moving their bodies. They're just, they're kind of stagnating a little bit. And that's not healthy, especially for a child with, it's not healthy for kids anyway to just be sitting playing the video game. But
Right.
especially when you have a child with ADHD, they need that exercise. They need that body movement. They need that stimulation in their mind and their body. And like you were saying earlier, it was the diet. They was also telling us about taking some things out of his diet, and they was talking about some things that were trigger foods. Like,
Right.
so
Oh, I'm so glad you said that word triggers. That's another thing. Parents need to be mindful of, especially with younger kids. Go to the school, even with their playmates or wherever, find out what their triggers are. Find out what things, work against their diagnoses. And those are things also those are going to be key into what is a part of their treatment plan, whether it's their educational plan or whether it's their behavioral modification plan.
okay,
Find out what the triggers are.
yes, those triggers are serious. I
Hmm.
see it in action.
Yes.
So if we have any questions in our comments, please just list those and we'll try to address those. But other than that, those were all the questions I had about ADHD in kids and adults. We got to keep knowing that parents, you got to be patient. You got to know that it's resources out there for you.
Right.
Work with the school, work with your teachers. I
Yes.
don't know how it is now. I wish we could have had a parent on here that's working now in the school system with their child doing virtual with ADHD. I would love to know how that's going and if the school is providing any extra support for those parents with kids with ADHD that's on virtual learning. Um,
Right, absolutely. I do know that the Georgia Department of Education has a lot of information on their website about families kids who have disabilities or have ADHD and being homeschooled right now. So please, please, please check out the Georgia Department of Education's website. They have a lot of um, resources for parents and really good information. So again, go to the Georgia Department of Education's website. That's something that they really there's a lot of information, COVID information out there for families right now.
okay. So we will put this information up on our page, on our Live It Out Inc. page. Miss Stephanie, again, girl, you are a walking Google. You are, you are a
I
walking
hope
Google.
so.
And
I hope so. Let me see. I'm seeing somebody, let's see, told us his medication has to be adjusted so he can, oh, okay. Someone talking about how there had a student or a child rather that medications needed to be adjusted.
Yeah, and keep close tabs on the medication that you're giving your kids.
That's
And the
right.
person that was, I mean, you guys, you're looking into natural supplements. Do your homework. Do your background research. And always talk to your pediatrician. To make sure that you're doing everything that you need to do to keep your child safe and
That's
healthy.
right. And you want to definitely, I'll say this to families. I don't know if schools still do the self-contained classrooms, how they, will have the special education classes for students who have really struggled in the normal class setting. Always do what is necessary to make sure that your child is definitely receiving the appropriate free public education that they're entitled to. And just
Exactly.
don't be so quick to move your child to a self contained classroom.
Yes.
Always try to exhaust all possibilities before that happens. And, it's a team effort. If parents can't do it themselves, see if you got a good girlfriend, a good boyfriend, a church member, somebody that can assist you during your time. Because it's not easy, and it's easy for families to get burned out fast because you're dealing with that child, every day, all day. And if they're running at 10 and you're on empty, then you can't help your child. So make sure you stay safe, stay healthy, and you take care of your own needs so that you can help take care of your child's needs.
Exactly. To live by. Miss Stephanie, thank you so much.
You're
I love it. I
welcome.
love you. Continue to be a peer
Thank you.
mediator and all the great work
Thank
you're doing
you.
to help families. You
Thank
are
you.
definitely a beacon of light to that community, the ADHD, and all those families that reach out to you for help.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on Live It Out. My
You're
grandbaby is
welcome.
starting to go crazy.
I hear, hey, darling.
Yeah, she thought she.
Oh, I feel like I need a hug.
Yeah, she probably need a hug. But again, thank you, love. I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
you. Thank you so much.
You're quite welcome.
And thank you guys for tuning in to Live It Out. Make sure you join us next week as we do breast cancer awareness. So if you have anybody that's a survivor and they want to share their story, or they want to show us we want to show them some love. We just want to love on them and let them know we're here to support them, um, and all of that. So again, throw the L's up for Live It Out, Inc. And we will continue to be an advocate for all our kids,
I know
ADHD,
that's where you're going.
all of them. So thank
That's
you guys.
right.
Until next time. Mwah.